The first snow of the season had barely touched the mountain peaks when the villagers spotted him hauling planks up the steep slope. He was a boy, small and wiry, but his movements were precise, almost deliberate, like every step, every lift, and every hammer strike had a purpose no one could see. He was building a cabin. Not just any cabin, though. This one was different. It had two roofs stacked in a strange way, walls that seemed thicker than necessary, and corners that jutted at odd angles. No one in the village had seen anything like it. From the edge of the village, the neighbors gathered, leaning against frost-covered fences, eyes wide with curiosity and amusement. "Why does he need two roofs?" asked an old man, squinting against the bright winter sun. "It's just a cabin. One is enough." A woman shook her head and whispered, "Maybe he's gone mad. Who builds something like that?" Their laughter echoed up the mountain, sharp and brittle, cutting through the crisp air. The boy didn't answer. He never looked down. He just carried the next plank, measured it carefully, and fixed it into place. Every day, the villagers watched the same scene. They saw him stacking wood, hammering nails, and creating walls that looked oddly thick. He added extra beams here, carved out tiny openings there, and reinforced corners that seemed unnecessary. To the villagers, it made no sense. They could not understand why he spent hours building what they called useless extras. Hidden spaces appeared beneath the floorboards, little cubbyholes inside the walls, and small, almost invisible vents near the roofline. Every move he made looked suspicious, strange, and slightly magical. Some villagers began to whisper among themselves. "He's wasting his time," said one. "Nothing strange about his cabin will save him from the cold," said another. Children peeked through gaps in the fence, eyes wide, their cheeks red from the wind. They wondered what the boy was doing, why he worked so tirelessly, and why he refused to answer their questions. Adults laughed openly, mocking his methods. "You'll freeze in that mountain cabin," they shouted. "Two roofs won't save you." But the boy never replied. He had a plan, and no one could see it yet. By the third day, the cabin began to take shape. The two roofs layered neatly, forming an almost surreal silhouette against the snowy slopes. Every plank fit perfectly, every corner aligned with precision. The villagers stared from below, unable to comprehend the purpose of what they called the double cabin. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others chuckled nervously. Even those who had initially dismissed him as foolish began to feel unease creeping in. There was something different about the boy's work, something that made them pause despite themselves. Inside, the boy moved with quiet efficiency. Hidden compartments lined the walls. He stacked wood carefully in secret shelves, reserved space for storing food, and built small partitions that could shield him from wind or falling snow. He reinforced the roof beams in ways that seemed excessive, yet every piece of wood had its reason. Every nail was hammered at an exact angle. Every cut in the planks had a purpose. Even the odd jutting corners of the cabin were designed to redirect snow and wind, though no one could guess that from outside. As the sun climbed higher, the clouds above the peaks began to darken. The wind shifted, sweeping across the mountain like a cold warning. The villagers noticed it, but they shrugged and went about their day, confident in their own simple homes. Still, some couldn't help stealing glances at the boy. He moved as if he had seen the storm coming already. Each hammer strike was timed perfectly, each measurement precise, as though he had a map of the wind and snow in his mind. They began to sense that this boy might know something they didn't. One afternoon, a particularly harsh gust swept through the slope. Snowflakes whipped sideways, freezing in midair. The villagers huddled near their chimneys, staring up at the boy. The double cabin swayed slightly under the wind, but it held firm. The beams creaked, but the structure remained solid. A few of the villagers began to feel a twinge of doubt. "Maybe he knows what he's doing," one muttered under his breath. Another shook his head. "No. It's just luck," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Even as the villagers laughed less and whispered more, the boy never stopped working. He cut more planks, adjusted beams, and reinforced walls. He added an extra layer of insulation under the floors, making secret channels that could trap warmth and redirect it through the cabin. He built tiny vents high in the walls, small holes that let air flow in a controlled way, preventing drafts without letting heat escape. Every detail of the double cabin was intentional, designed for a storm that had yet to arrive. At night, when the wind howled down from the peaks and the stars sparkled cold and distant, the boy's cabin glowed faintly from within. Smoke curled gently from a hidden chimney, carrying warmth into the cold air. The villagers watched from below, curiosity now mixed with unease. They whispered again. "How does he stay so calm?" one asked. "What is he hiding in there?" Another shivered and said, "He's building more than a cabin. I can feel it." By the fifth day, the cabin was nearly complete. Two sturdy roofs, walls thick and reinforced, and strange jutting corners that seemed almost magical against the snowy backdrop. Hidden inside, compartments were ready for supplies, and channels in the walls were prepared to redirect wind. Every plank, every nail, every design choice had a purpose the villagers could not guess. And as they watched the boy from below, the clouds thickened and the air turned colder. The first real flakes of the storm began to fall. The villagers laughed less now. Their curiosity had grown into worry. They could see the boy working tirelessly, stacking wood and adjusting his strange cabin with calm precision. Something about the double cabin felt alive, as if it were more than wood and nails. They didn't know what it was yet, but they could feel the difference. Even the children who had initially giggled at the boy's odd design now watched in silence, captivated by the rhythm of his work. As night fell on the mountain, the wind grew stronger, cutting across the slope with a sharp, icy edge. The boy placed the last beam for the roof, checked the hidden compartments, and stepped back to survey his work. He touched a plank here, a corner there, as if confirming everything was in place. The first heavy snow began to drift down, thick and fast, coating the cabin in white. From below, the villagers could only watch, fear mixing with awe. They had mocked him, laughed at his double cabin, and doubted his every move. Now, the storm had begun, and the cabin stood ready. The boy went inside, lit a small fire in a hidden corner, and listened. Every howl of wind, every snap of ice on the mountain, every whistle of the storm outside mattered. He knew the blizzard would come, and he had built for it. The villagers had no idea what awaited them, and he didn't plan to tell them. The mystery of the double cabin remained unsolved, hanging over the slope like a secret waiting to reveal itself. And as the storm clouds gathered, turning the sky a dark steel gray, the boy leaned against the wall of his strange, perfect cabin, calm and patient. Outside, the first real flakes of winter swirled in the wind, and the mountain whispered its icy warning. The villagers laughed no longer. The mountain boy had begun his test, and the storm was coming. The morning after the first flakes began to fall, the village woke to a world transformed. Snow blanketed the streets and rooftops, thick and heavy, and the wind screamed through the chimneys. Villagers shivered, eyes wide with shock, as they realized the storm was no ordinary snowfall. Their cabins rattled under the pressure, shingles flew off in gusts, and some doors froze shut with ice. Panic spread like wildfire. People ran to secure what they could, banging on doors and trying to shove fences against the wind. But above the village, on the mountain slope, the boy's double cabin stood calm and unwavering. From below, it looked almost untouched, its twin roofs layered perfectly to deflect snow, the thick walls holding steady against gusts that bent trees and tore through fences. No one understood how it stayed so solid. Villagers craned their necks, disbelief written on every face. "How is that even possible?" one gasped. Another muttered, "It shouldn't stand in a storm like this. It's built wrong." Their laughter from days before was gone, replaced with unease and envy. Inside the cabin, the boy moved quietly, checking the hidden channels he had built into the walls. Small vents allowed the wind to pass harmlessly, redirecting it so the heat inside stayed trapped. He fed the fire in the secret hearth, watching as the flames warmed the wooden floors. Even the extra layer of roof worked perfectly, keeping snow from piling against the walls and preventing drafts from creeping in. Every detail he had labored over now proved its worth, though the villagers below had no idea. The storm thickened, and the snow fell heavier, turning the world into a white blur. Paths disappeared, fences vanished under drifts, and people stumbled through snow up to their knees. Their simple cabins creaked under the weight of snow, walls shivering, roofs sagging. Many tried to make it to safer spots, but the wind was merciless, sweeping anyone who stepped outside almost off their feet. Families huddled together, teeth chattering, wrapped in blankets and coats that seemed to do little against the cold. Above them, the mountain boy watched from his small window. He had stocked the hidden compartments with firewood and food, anticipating not just one day of storm, but 5. His cabin was more than a shelter, it was a fortress built for extremes. Extra walls, hidden spaces, and reinforced corners made it almost impossible for the wind to penetrate. He moved efficiently, checking the vents, stoking the fire, and making sure the channels that redirected cold air were clear. The storm raged, but inside it was calm, dry, and warm. The villagers noticed something strange. From the village, the cabin seemed almost magical. The wind bent and twisted around it, snow sliding off the double roof as if repelled by some invisible force. No icicles hung from the edges, no snow piled heavily on the beams. A few of the braver villagers called out to him, voices lost in the roar of the blizzard. "How are you still warm? How is it standing?" But the boy said nothing. He didn't need to explain. The storm would reveal the answers soon enough. Desperation spread through the village. Some families tried to dig paths through the snow, shovels cracking under the weight of ice. Others collected scraps of wood to reinforce their cabins, but it was almost useless. The wind found every crack, every weak spot, every flaw. One man leaned against a doorframe, panting, watching the double cabin on the slope. "I thought he was foolish," he admitted quietly. "But he built for this. He knew this would come." Even those who had mocked him now began to fear the storm and envy his foresight. Inside the cabin, the mountain boy moved to the small compartments hidden beneath the floor. He pulled out more firewood, replenishing the supply without letting heat escape. He checked a hidden food stash, ensuring there was enough for the 5 days the forecast predicted. The vents were working perfectly. Warm air flowed through the odd channels he had carved inside the walls, and the double roof kept the snow from pressing against the structure. Every unusual choice he had made, the extra roofs, the hidden walls, the strange corners, proved essential. By mid-afternoon, the wind had grown fierce. Snow swirled in blinding sheets, reducing visibility to almost nothing. The villagers could barely see each other as they struggled outside. Some tried to reach safer cabins, but many returned, shivering and defeated. Their homes groaned under the storm's pressure, roofs sagging, windows rattling. Families huddled together, eyes wide with fear, wishing they had prepared better. They had mocked the boy for days, but now they realized his foresight was the difference between comfort and suffering. The boy, however, never panicked. He adjusted a vent near the roof, made sure the hidden corners were sealed, and checked the small fire in the secret hearth. The cabin's insulation was working exactly as he had designed. Even if the storm reached its peak, he would remain safe. He had planned for worst-case scenarios, and now those plans were being tested. The wind howled, ice sliced across the windows, and snow drifted in thick layers outside, but inside, the air stayed warm, steady, and calm. From the village, people noticed another strange thing. While the storm battered their homes, the snow around the boys' cabin formed unusual patterns, sliding off the double roof neatly, drifting away from the walls. Some said it looked as if the mountain itself had bent the snow around him. Children pressed their noses to frosty windows, staring in awe. "How does he do it?" they whispered. "It's like magic." Adults shook their heads, unsure whether to believe what they were seeing. The boy's silence, his calm, and the strange perfection of the double cabin only made the mystery deeper. By evening, the storm showed no sign of slowing. Visibility dropped to almost zero, the wind rattled against the remaining structures in the village, and the cold seemed to seep into every crack and corner. The villagers huddled together in fear, exhausted and desperate. One man shouted at his shaking wife, "We should have listened. Why didn't we follow him?" But there was no answer. The boy had already prepared for this moment, and the storm would continue to test everyone else. The mountain boy lit another small fire, adding more wood to the hidden stove. Warmth spread evenly, circulating through the channels in the walls, and he knew the design would hold for days. He checked the extra roof beams once more, tapped the corners, and listened to the wind. Every creak and whistle told him the storm's strength, and he adjusted his defenses silently, efficiently. Outside, the storm roared, but inside, he remained safe, calm, and ready. Night fell, and the blizzard reached its peak. Snowdrifts piled high, almost burying the village's simpler cabins. Windows cracked under pressure, roofs groaned, and doors froze shut. Families wrapped themselves in whatever blankets they had, praying the storm would end. But on the slope above, the mountain boy's double cabin glowed faintly with warmth and firelight. It was a beacon of security, a strange, perfect fortress against the storm. Even as the storm raged, he moved through the cabin quietly, checking hidden compartments, reinforcing weak spots, and making sure every system worked. The villagers could only watch helplessly. They had laughed at him for days, mocked his double roof and unusual construction, and now they understood they had underestimated him. His patience, his foresight, and his strange methods were keeping him safe while they struggled to survive. And as the wind howled into the night, snow swirling like a frozen storm monster around the village, the mountain boy leaned back against a hidden wall, calm and confident. He had built more than a cabin. He had built a solution, a sanctuary, and a mystery the villagers could only hope to understand. Outside, the blizzard raged for another night, testing every home, every family, every roof. But inside the double cabin, the boy remained ready, safe, and prepared for whatever the storm would throw next. The 5th day of the storm arrived with a roar that shook the village to its core. Snow had piled so high that some roofs were nearly invisible beneath the white weight. The wind screamed like a living thing, bending trees and tearing at fences. Families clutched each other in their homes, shivering, teeth chattering, desperate for warmth. Paths were blocked, doors frozen shut, and hope was running thin. The villagers had spent days mocking the boy, calling his double cabin foolish and unnecessary. Now, the truth hit them like a slap of ice. He had been ready all along. From below, they could see the silhouette of the cabin through the thick snow. The twin roofs cut through the blizzard like a knife, snow sliding off in neat drifts, the walls untouched by wind or frost. It was impossible, they thought. No cabin should survive this storm unscathed. Parents shouted, children stared, and everyone felt a mix of awe and fear. The boy's silence, his calm confidence, and the sheer perfection of the structure made it look almost magical. For 5 days, he had faced what the villagers could barely imagine. Inside, the mountain boy moved like clockwork. He checked the hidden fire pit, feeding it just enough wood to keep it burning steadily. He opened secret compartments, rotating his stock of food to make sure nothing went to waste. Warm air circulated through the channels he had built into the walls, evenly distributing heat to every corner of the cabin. The extra roof layers prevented snow from pressing against the sides, and hidden reinforcements kept the structure steady even under the storm's brutal force. Every unusual choice he had made, the double roof, extra walls, hidden nooks, proved essential. Desperate shouts echoed from the village. Some families had tried to make it to safer cabins, only to be blocked by towering drifts and icy winds. One man yelled to his wife, "We should have listened to him. Why didn't we go up the slope?" But there was no answer. The boy had anticipated the storm, planned for every gust of wind, every snowdrift, every freezing night. He was calm, prepared, and untouchable in his double cabin. By midday, villagers could no longer ignore the miracle of the mountain cabin. They huddled together at the edge of the village, freezing, teeth chattering, breath fogging in the icy air. "We can't survive another night like this," one man admitted. "He's the only one ready." A woman nodded, shivering. We laughed at him. We mocked him. And now we're begging. Children looked up at the slope, eyes wide with hope and fear. The boy had become their only chance. The mountain boy noticed them through the flurries. His calm never wavered. He had expected this. He opened a hidden door, revealing a small passage that led into the warmth of the double cabin. One by one, the villagers made their way up the slope, trudging through knee-deep snow, faces red with cold and fear. The boy guided them silently, showing them where to step, helping the weakest along the way. Inside, the cabin was warm, dry, and surprisingly spacious. The extra walls and partitions created cozy spaces for families, while hidden compartments provided extra blankets and food. The villagers' eyes widened as they explored the cabin. Every secret nook held supplies. Hidden channels circulated heat evenly, preventing cold spots. Even the small fire pit, invisible at first glance, provided enough warmth for the entire group. Parents whispered to each other, awed and ashamed. "We thought he was foolish," one said quietly. "He saved us." Children pressed their faces against the windows, marveling at how snow slid off the twin roofs without piling up. It was almost as if the cabin had been designed by the mountain itself, perfectly adapted to the storm. Even as relief settled over the villagers, the storm continued to rage outside. Winds tore through the mountains, snow whipped against windows, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. But inside, the mountain boy remained calm. He fed the fire, checked the hidden channels, and made sure everyone was settled. He had built for this moment, planned for the worst, and now his foresight was saving lives. The villagers finally understood why he had worked in silence for days, why he had added strange corners, extra walls, and hidden spaces. Every detail had a purpose. Families huddled together on the cabin floors, wrapped in blankets from secret compartments, warm for the first time in 5 days. Adults shook their heads in disbelief, finally realizing the boy's intelligence and patience had outmatched the storm. "We mocked him," one woman whispered. "We should have helped him, not laughed at him." Children nodded, eyes wide, silent in awe. The mountain boy simply moved from one hidden space to another, adjusting vents, feeding the fire, and making sure heat circulated evenly. His calm presence reassured everyone. Outside, the blizzard showed no mercy, but inside, the double cabin was a fortress. Snow drifted around the twin roofs, sliding harmlessly down the sides. Wind howled and whistled, but the walls and hidden partitions absorbed the force, keeping the interior safe. The villagers could not believe their eyes. They had been frozen, desperate, and struggling to survive, while the boy had remained completely prepared, his cabin untouched by the storm's wrath. By nightfall, the storm had reached its peak. The village lay buried beneath deep drifts. Chimneys groaned, fences were lost under snow, and families were exhausted from battling the elements. But in the cabin, the mountain boy moved quietly, checking compartments, replenishing firewood, and ensuring that everyone was safe. He had thought of everything: hidden channels for heat, extra insulation under the floors, secret storage for supplies, and even small nooks for the children to rest comfortably. Finally, the storm began to subside. The winds softened, and snow settled into thick blankets across the landscape. The villagers, now warmed and safe inside the double cabin, looked around in awe. They had doubted him, mocked him, and yet here he was, calm and prepared, while they had barely survived. One man finally spoke, his voice full of respect. "We were fools to laugh. He knew what he was doing all along." A woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "He saved us." The mountain boy said nothing. He stepped outside briefly, feeling the cold air against his face, surveying the snow-covered peaks. The cabin had held, the storm had tested it, and his preparations had proven flawless. He returned inside, calm and silent, letting the villagers recover. Their eyes followed him, full of respect and newfound admiration. They had learned a lesson: patience, foresight, and intelligence were as powerful as any storm. In the following hours, the villagers began to help each other, shoveling paths and securing their homes, but they did so with a new understanding. They spoke in hushed tones about the mountain boy's wisdom, the clever design of his cabin, and the mysterious way it had endured the storm. Children pressed their faces to windows, still amazed at the twin roofs, the hidden walls, and the warm air that seemed to flow effortlessly through the structure. By the end of the day, the village had survived, but it had changed forever. The mountain boy's double cabin had not only withstood the blizzard, it had become a symbol of intelligence, patience, and preparation. No one would ever doubt him again. His unusual methods, once mocked, were now celebrated. Families whispered about how he had built not just a cabin, but a fortress, a sanctuary, and a lesson for all who had doubted him. And the mountain boy? He remained calm, silent, and thoughtful. He knew the mountains would test anyone who lived among them, and he had proven that with foresight and patience, even the harshest storm could be overcome. The villagers had begged for shelter, and he had given it freely, showing that preparation, intelligence, and quiet determination were stronger than fear or mockery. The storm had ended, but the story of the double cabin had only begun. It would be told for years, passed down from parents to children, a tale of respect, survival, and the boy who had outsmarted the mountain itself.